Dopamine swipe, dopamine swipe. Follow us, likes, double tap.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the 817 podcast. We are in the studio. Jimmy is back. How you feeling, brother?
Feeling good. It's not exciting to be back. I would say not exciting to get back into the routine of sheltering in place. But great trip. Yesterday was sort of the clearing our 7-day isolation, and made it there and back safe. It was really nice to be doing something a little bit different, and excited about maybe having a finish line in the next 3 or 4 months of a vaccine and getting to see the end of all this social or physical distancing.
Yeah, what's the I know it's been like a play-by-play. Every little move that happens to the vaccine, where does it go? It sounds like it's like Troy Aikman's doing the football analysis, and it's like, and the truck is now down, and it's going taking a left. It's down to the Baltimore and has arrived to the hospital.
So today is Sunday. The first UPS and FedEx trucks left the Pfizer facility. I believe it was either yesterday or Friday. Tarrant County Public Health tweeted out the breakdown of where vaccines are going for this first week. And I think Fort Worth Hospitals was getting, it was something like 16,000 doses.
Yeah.
So good first start for our healthcare workers and nursing home people. So yeah, hopefully, I think maybe it's next week. Moderna also goes up to potentially be approved. So we could have 2 vaccines out there, both about the same efficacy, and get yourself shot up in the arm. And in the next month or two, I think we'll really find out. The big question now is, once you're vaccinated, can you still carry and spread? And are you just protected from getting sick, or does it actually prevent you from even catching the virus?
Yeah. When do you see normal people like me and you being able to take the vaccine?
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
I don't know how many doses we bought from Moderna.
Yeah.
But I believe there's some stipulation that because they're part of Operation Warp Speed, that a lot of their development will have to go to the United States. Our president and his team really botched the Pfizer purchasing back in the summer, where now it looks like it might even be June before we're getting more Pfizer doses, because other countries are smart, not led by children, and actually bought enough vaccine doses for their people. I think that Moderna is the big one that the U.S. is going to have to lean on, because our president is a child and doesn't have any investments in Pfizer, and so decided not to buy a whole lot of that vaccine.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of children, we also talk about Texas as a whole. Ken Paxton, us trying to leave the country and become our own country. There's a lot going on there as well. Texas is trying to help Donald Trump with his voting stuff.
As of Friday, the Supreme Court officially didn't even hear that case, threw it out. But Ken Paxton and co. Decided to sue a few other states over their election results. These are the same people who are very big on states' rights and would actively defend that states run their own elections. But they're mad that their boy really got blown out. And so they tried suing the other states to overturn their election results. Ken Paxton is obviously fishing for a pardon because he's under investigation. It's not super surprising that a guy known for bribery is trying to commit bribery. But a lot of people jumped on board, including, what's his name? It's a guy who represents East Fort Worth. I don't know why I'm blanking on his name now, but a notable person who did not jump onto it's Kay Granger. So thank you, Kay, for not doing that. It makes it slightly easier to stomach that you represent the city because you are moving on and you recognize that this is over and was completely valid.
When the right-wing media is moving on, I mean,
why
are you holding on?
Fox is trying to. Is Fox not right wing anymore? Like, what does Fox fall into now that the new right wing is OAN and Newsmax?
It's going to be interesting to see how, like, you have this going on, and what's crazy is like all these like California businesses who are like leaving the coast and the exodus there is like. Texas is kind of in this weird, like, oh, it's the cool place to go and like take your HQ. But then like we're at the same time, now trying to like go against other states and tell them, and help, a losing president who needs to get over it and start doing real work at the end of the finish line. Yeah.
I think Texas is in this place where it seems trendy because of how blue the big cities are. And so it feels culturally cool to come move your company here, but we're still governed by pure capitalists.
Yeah.
And because of that, it makes it inviting for those companies, when they're not having to face, they're really running from the taxes that a place like California would put on them and the super high cost of living that places like San Francisco have. So it's kind of in this weird place where it feels like you're still going to a like cool, hip, trendy place, but it's really essentially just like any other place in the South, but with some bigger cities.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's going to be cool to see the evolution. I mean, we were talking about this before. Austin has to be an entire different environment, culture, and energy after this pandemic.
Yeah.
Like this last 10 months, the evolution of that city, who knows what the humans walking around, like just how they look at it, how they think of themselves in the city. It's going to be crazy just how many people are moving here.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there was an article in the Star Telegram this week about housing costs right now and how like houses are selling well above value right now because there is a large influx of people, especially from California. People are also deciding that they need more space now that they've been stuck in an apartment for 10 months. It is going to be really interesting. Like, how quickly does the low cost of living disappear when we are becoming like red California, essentially?
Yeah. We saw Oracle said they're moving their headquarters to Austin, which I think is interesting because Oracle is ran by, someone who I would say is like the only in the SF area that was a Trump supporter, like his biggest investor. And so he is kind of Texas-ish in a way already. So, I guess that's good for him, but speaking of Fort Worth though, we have a lot of business stuff happening here. We had, Facebook expanding the data center. That's cool for jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Facebook's dealing with a lot of other things. Nationally.
I think the Facebook thing is interesting. And we talked about it, maybe in like our third or fourth episode where, a lot of these companies and jobs that are coming in are not in downtown Fort Worth, but they're helping these suburbs, especially like Hazlitt and Roanoke are two of the big ones that have been booming, especially because of Amazon, but also because of Facebook. And so it's like it brings a lot of population and jobs to Tarrant County, but not necessarily to Fort Worth. Maybe it's the 682 instead of the 817. And so it's a positive thing to see them continue to invest here, but it's not necessarily bringing people who are going to spend their time and money in local downtown Fort Worth businesses. But they're gonna be at the Papados.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it was like they said $200 million investment. And honestly, if I'm reading this correctly, the company has more than 150 workers there today. After completion, there will be about 200 jobs supported, including Facebook employees and contractors. It will be the world's, it's expanding its massive data center in Fort Worth, but I feel like 170,000 square feet at the site. So it's going to be pretty big. I actually never seen it. Or even
me neither.
I have no idea where it is.
No idea.
Which is interesting. It's like, you think you would want more exposure.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to, and that's what me and Robert were talking about, like the culture of, we say we have all these companies here, but I feel like we don't have this like tech culture, or like, isn't none of this, you feel like you're in a up and coming hub.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I think that's part of Fort Worth's culture to really cling on to local businesses.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate.
Yeah.
But yeah, it like Fort Worth struggles to brand itself as a tech hub, even though with talking with Robert and talking with Cameron, like we see that it is in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But it hasn't really grown into that identity.
Yeah. One of my friends who I was hanging out with this weekend, who listens to the 817 podcast. Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. He was saying, like, I think a lot of the thing is like Fort Worth has a lot of important non-sexy businesses.
Yeah.
That is just like, we have a lot of like from railroads to, just
Lockheed Martin.
Yeah. Just a lot of important stuff that's just not sexy, but very practical businesses that are needed.
Yeah.
And he's like, and maybe we're just okay with that. And I'm like, all right, I'll leave it alone. That sounds cool to me. I like that. And so, but we're going to give the kind of coolness to the city with Pier 1 building becoming the new city hall potentially, depending on December 15th.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of cool. What's your take? I know it was happening while you were gone, but it's going to get approved here.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting. I like the idea of one of the Skyline buildings being owned by the city and housing the city. If you have ever had to go to the current City Hall building or two, they are not nice. They're very old, but they're in prime real estate spots. And so I think that could even be a win for the city, not only in that they're going to save money on what they would have needed to redo those, but some developer would love to come in and put an apartment complex or something on those sites. They're really valuable places to be. And so I think twofold, it could be a win for the city finding a cheaper alternative to redoing those buildings, the city making one of its most prominent buildings its own, and freeing up those lots that are significant to potentially be sold and used and have a new investment come in.
Yeah. And a lot of the, Sons of Liberty, that area, the new flavor of those buildings are kind of cool too.
Yeah.
And you got the historic TMP look over there.
For sure.
I always love the warehouse looking, the abandoned warehouse.
Yeah.
Man, it'd be so cool if like Amazon or someone came and like build over there, because those buildings are gorgeous.
Yeah.
And so
the public market building.
Yeah. So, but we'll see. We want to kind of dive into the main story here. I guess, let's go ahead and talk about like the 6th police chief decision making, and also, let's start there. I mean, that was a great kind of story on the Fort Worth Mag.
Yeah, so we've talked about how the current police chief is retiring. They had 50 applicants that they had whittled down to in the search for the new police chief. They've gotten that down to 6. One of them is out of state. I believe there was one that was from Vegas.
Yep.
The rest of them two of them are in Fort Worth. There's an Austinite, Carrollton. And so, it'll be interesting to see. They all seem really qualified. I'm really not sure what the city is looking for. Like they say that they're looking for somebody to help bridge the gap in community policing.
Yep.
But I don't know
what that really means.
Yeah, like the in-house people scare me because we've seen how Fort Worth PD has operated. There's been a lot of issues in the last few years especially, but in the last couple decades. Are how into that culture are they? How much would they be wanting to change that culture?
Yeah.
The Austin person is interesting because they've gone the full opposite way.
Vegas deals with a lot as well too.
Yeah, I mean, Vegas does deal with a lot. Like that's a high profile city. I guess the question with those people is, are they going to be committed to Fort Worth? Like how quickly would we be looking for another police chief? Because, you go from Vegas assistant, slightly bigger city in Fort Worth, police chief. Like, are you just looking to launch somewhere else?
Yeah.
Versus the North Texas candidates where it's like, okay, you seem committed to North Texas. Similar thing with the Austin police chief. Like, are they going to be committed to North Texas or not? I feel like this is a position where stability would mean a lot to developing the relationships necessary for comprehensive community policing.
Yeah, I think the part that's hard here is, I mean, this usually doesn't get high profile in the news, but also with how conservative we've obviously seen Fort Worth is in the voting space. And I think a lot of the fear that this whole defund the police culture created in the news does bring in an outside person from Austin, oh my gosh, or Vegas, oh my gosh, kind of scares people. That to me I could see from a political side.
Yeah, I'd be all about scaring the more conservative side, because then the other thing about the people from Fort Worth is like they're already integrated into the Police Officers Association. They see how that functions to provide financial support to the candidates that they want on the city council or in the mayor's office. I don't know. Maybe something new and fresh might be a positive for the city.
Yeah. What's funny here is like, I was like how they were breaking down the bios, and it's like a bachelor's of science in criminal justice. And like someone had a bachelor's of arts in criminal justice, which I was like,
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because that's just like school based. It's, funny that different schools award different degrees for the same. And
if you're one of those people, like, so I graduated with journalism, and like I do believe like bachelor's of sciences are more impressive and harder to get. So I also wonder if it's like the easier path to criminal. I just thought it was funny that they really highlighted their education, which these people are probably very experienced.
Yeah.
So like the idea of their education being acknowledged. It's just funny. Like the Fort Worth people are like masters of science degrees in criminal, but then it's like the Carrollton person was like masters of arts degree in criminology, which in criminal justice, which is, I guess, kind of just like, how does one become an art study and then one becomes science? For it seems like a very similar degree.
Yeah, you're more tuned into education than I am, so maybe I've literally never thought about the difference between them.
Yeah. So, well, we'll definitely keep up with it and kind of see what happens. Did it show when they're going to make a decision?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
I can't recall. I think that the goal is maybe January, but I think because of COVID, that's been pushed back. So I would probably expect sometime I believe that the police chief has agreed to stay on until like June.
Yeah.
While they complete the search.
Yeah. Well, at least we're hopefully going to do better than the county, right? And the Fort Worth prison.
Yeah, the Fort Worth, the Tarrant County prison system has really been brought to light this year with the number of deaths that have occurred in there. There were 2 more this past week. Not all of them have been COVID related, but I believe both of these were. we voted to let Bill Wayburn keep running these things into the ground. It's really sad. Obviously, the prison industrial construct in the United States is incredibly broken. But I think we see the forefront of that here in Fort Worth and in Tarrant County as we continue to see people die with no changes be made. Like there's no value on their life. And then it's also seen with the people working in these prisons are being overexposed to COVID. The prisoners don't have any chance, really. Like, they're in there. They're really being given no shot to try and stay safe. And that's trickling over into the employees also. Yeah. And it's sad that we don't put any value on that.
Yeah, and it shows this Monday, this last Monday article was at FMC Fort Worth, 33 total staff members have had the virus, of 330 total staff. So you're talking 10%.
And that's just 10% that have gotten tested.
Yeah.
Probably because they showed symptoms. I would imagine that a number of them that haven't been tested probably also have had the virus.
Yeah. That'd be hard too, having to go to work every day to, pay the bills.
I mean, that's just been the choice that the United States decided to make back in May was, we don't really care about you. You can go back to work and you're probably going to get the virus, but sorry.
Yeah.
See what happens in the prison system. Honestly, I don't know if it's something that we hold a lot of power in change over. I think that the power that we held, we gave away by reelecting the current sheriff to oversee that. But we want to get into our big story now. And really, I would say it's a theme of the power that you have over and in your city. And so there are a few different things that have come up this week with both Hemphill, the Hemphill corridor, and in Como, as well as the idea of Fort Worth being redistricted in the after we get the data from the 2020 census. So front page of the Sunday paper, Fort Worth is going to be investing $3.2 million to revive the Como neighborhood. We've talked in the last couple of months about similar investments being made into Stop 6. And I think what we are seeing is maybe some recognition that Fort Worth only goes if we bring the whole city along with it. We can't continue to ignore a lot of these neighborhoods that are racially divided and have been ignored for a long time if we as the city want to grow, considering that we're already a minority majority city. Yeah. So all of $3.2 million is being put into Como to really help revive that. And I think the concern with that is obviously gentrification, which we're seeing in Hemphill and their fight from Hemphill no se vende.
Yep.
Hemphill no se vende, or Hemphill is not for sale, a group that has encouraged the city to put off their vote around rezoning those areas to make sure that there is not gentrification that happens. And so I think it was a positive thing that the city said, yeah, you're right. Like, we need to do a study into this. We are going to listen to you. We need more community input into how this is going to go. And it was a similar theme to citizens having more input on an open and transparent budgetary process for this coming year. All that to say, we're also going to be redrawing district lines and adding city council members in the coming year. Right now, the city council is not racially consistent with the makeup of the city. Gerrymandering is obviously something that has been used by both parties for a long time to try and ensure and keep in place power structures. And so we need to have an input on that. And there are groups that are setting up ways to make that happen. I wouldn't trust anybody to be redrawing districts because there are obviously their own interests involved with that of getting reelected, being able to maintain the power that they have. And so really all of this is just how do we help the city along in making sure that we have a voice in what is happening as opposed to just allowing the status quo to be maintained.
Yeah. And I know like when we started this show, we were really like, kind of on the whole, we kind of got all the negative stories out from what we've been kind of seeing this week in Texas locally. And I think this seems like not a big deal or what's really happening, but there's some true efforts Fort Worth is taking. This is steps that they're listening and they're trying to be intentional about it. And, I think that's exciting. I mean, we've seen the transparency when it comes to participating in the budgeting process this year with virtual town halls and opportunities to kind of voice your opinion. I think what's really cool is the redistricting task force is allowing on Monday, January 4th, a virtual redistricting 101 for people like ourselves who are trying to figure this out on our own, trying to understand what does all this mean. And so I think that is exciting that they're doing that, and they're going to have a final kind of report around all of this in March 2nd. So I know what you might feel. We all kind of got up and went out and voted, and okay, we did it. We did our part.
Yeah.
This is now our opportunity because what really matters is what we do locally. And this allows you to take that same energy that you had for the national elections and now spend it in other ways that actually are going to impact you much more.
And 2021 is a massive year for Fort Worth with mayoral election, a number of city council seats going up for re-election, and adding 2 council members. And so going into the new year, there is a lot that we can do to shape the future of this city to make sure that neighborhoods like Como and Stop 6 are being invested in, to make sure that the Hemphill corridor in an area that is, starting to see gentrification does not let that accelerate. So I think the redistricting is a huge way for people to get involved. The story is on Fort Worth Weekly. It's still on their homepage if you want to get all of the details about the town hall and link up with the group that is really pushing a nonpartisan effort towards redistricting. But that is going to have a massive implication on the next decade for Fort Worth until the next census.
Yeah, and so what is your take on the ability to, because what's weird about Hemphill corridor, I mean, there's already, the Walmart there that kind of is an eyesore. You look at Como is in a gridlock.
Yeah.
It is almost like the gentrification wolves are surrounded Como and they're licking their chops.
Yeah.
Ready to be
for sure.
All right, so what are we going to do with this? So I guess what's tough with this stuff is, one, do we actually care about this? And can you stop it truly? And what are some examples of cities that we've maybe seen be able to pull off being right to the people who've grown up there and are proud to be from Como, and our strong Latino population in Hemphill, who I feel like has a great space right there in the city. Thoughts?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Off the top of my head, I would have to do more research into cities that I think have done it well. Growing up, we used to drive through Atlanta a lot of the time, driving from South Florida up into the Appalachian Mountain area.
Yep.
And I mean, at Atlanta, like you still see a lot of that population still owns that like downtown Atlanta area, even though there are a lot of corporations. So it may, I'm sure that there has been plenty of gentrifying in that area, but that's a place that comes to mind where people still have a grasp on that city, the people that grew up there. Yeah, I think it's a really big deal to not continue to push the people who make a city what it is outside of the city. And that's, I mean, I think we see it with Austin.
Yeah.
We see it with San Francisco, where a lot of people who grew up there can't continue to afford to live there, and the city really loses its culture. I know Houston comes to mind, which their districts are gerrymandered to death.
Yeah.
And the downtown isn't super residential anyway, so I guess that a lot of those people have been pushed out of there by corporations.
Yeah, and I think like what is the fear here, and why this story, by the way, shout out Fort Worth Weekly, Fort Worth Magazine, everyone is doing some great stories.
Yeah.
Super excited to just dive into your guys' work. Keep on keeping on. So, but this story here, right? It just talks about how, in theory, it's supposed to be representing proportionally race, gender, beliefs of Fort Worth. And they're showing here that, right, 3 of 8 city council members, plus the mayor, are female, but Fort Worth leadership remains white. 1 Hispanic, 2 black council members. And like you mentioned, we're a majority, and not just a little bit majority minority. It's 60% of, Cowtown, Fort Worth is black, Latino, Hispanic, so that's crazy, high, but yet in our city council, it's predominantly white. And but what you're also seeing though, is that it's a Texas issue. I thought that was the biggest stat in the story, of a whopping 95% of the Republican state legislators identify as white, non-Latino, according to the Texas Observer.
Yeah.
So this is why what you said, like voting for your local officials is so important.
Yeah. Because who represents Fort Worth at a state and national level? It's, for the most part, white guys.
Yeah.
Which isn't who represents our city.
Yeah.
And so that's even where the redistricting is super important, because if that is not done by a nonpartisan group, it's only going to further enforce that 95% of Republican legislators are white men.
Yeah.
So it really makes a big difference for the city.
Can I donate to these things? That's another thing. We need to donate to these people.
Well, and that's a big part of why things are so entrenched, is that a lot of the conservative white male lawmakers are able to be funded by either themselves, their community, corporations that are here, and that's just a lot more inaccessible for people of color, for women. Yeah, I mean, I do think there's a big piece of that coming up in this next election cycle for the city of Fort Worth, is going to be, how can we help fund and support these people that represent the city but don't necessarily have access to $20,000 from the Police Officers Association to invest in Facebook ads. This
makes me like all the money we've spent on the Senate races across the country.
Yeah.
That didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
I feel like those dollars could have been localized. And I even just think my responsibility, because I did pump a lot of money into different people of my own money. And I was like, man, I need to take that same energy to these locally. It doesn't feel as sexy.
Yeah.
It's not as triggered because they don't put Mitch McConnell's face or Lindsey Graham's face on there to get you all worked up. But these are important.
Well, and the other piece is, if you're if you're a developer, how can you help a local candidate that you support build a website that is functional, it does well in SEO and search engine optimization, has the right information on there, and is consistently updated? I remember whenever Deborah Peoples ran against Betsy Price last for mayor, I guess it was 2019, going to her website to try and learn more about her, and there wasn't anything on there about her platform. Yeah. And it was like, how are you going to sway a neutral voter when they go to your website and can't learn anything about you? And a lot of that does come from not having the resources to properly build those. So if you're a developer, how can you try and partner with a candidate to help them there? Your place of business, your place of work, your house, your neighborhood. How can you help influence these people that are on a tighter budget to help overcome that gap and make it competitive races, or just at least push the incumbent or the more better funded candidate to do better because they know they have somebody on their heels?
Yeah. It makes me think, man, Deborah's been pretty quiet. Like, I feel like I don't know who's running for elections, but I just thought, because she got a lot of the recognition for the Black Lives Matter painted in the road on Main Street, I feel like that was a great opportunity to like become more of a brand of hope that I think excites people to go vote, younger people to go vote. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's going to happen.
I very distinctly remember, like, I know for a fact that this happened, that she said something over the summer that she was going to be running for mayor. I don't know if they're trying to just get through inauguration and then ramp up. Like, if they don't want to spend themselves so much when there's other stuff going on, confuse people what election they're voting for. But yeah, I'm sure that whoever it is running will need support in the coming months. Yeah,
because the thing about what always fears me about Fort Worth or any big up and coming city is there's a lot of national companies that all of this is just numbers to them.
Yeah.
And when the numbers start beeping, oh, this is where you need to start buying land, then they do their process. So they get their lobbyists out there, they get their people out there, they pull the ear. And that's also kind of the tough part. I mean, we talk about, breaking up Facebooks and breaking up Googles, but I feel like a lot of these real estate companies don't get enough drilled at on doing the same thing in a physical world. I mean, and that also, I think, is
driving up rent costs. Like, when it's one developer or two developers that own all of the apartment complexes in a city, like, obviously they can drive up rent costs.
The one right there, what is it going to be called? Ramble and Rose or something?
Oh, yeah.
That one's Chicago. So it's
Chicago owns Whataburger now. Like,
yeah, exactly.
We lost our identity.
So I don't know. I think it's just really hard. It's really hard to do. And this also goes to why I also think going to even the Robert Stearns conversation is why it's also important for us to get an original Fort Worthian to succeed. Like, a lot of San Antonio's success is because Rack Space was started by a San Antonio kid who then created Rackers, and what I think that's what they call them. And like, they were like, created this culture. He invested into this downtown. His city means something to him.
Yeah.
And like, I think in order for Fort Worth to take that next leap from being the 13th biggest city to, whatever the goal is, I don't even know what the goal is, but we're going to need to really invest in our young, ambitious entrepreneurs and creatives so that we can win. Because then if you have a local person competing against these Chicago guys who now bought Whataburger, who now buys these things, and say, no, this is Fort Worth. This is how we want to make it. And we're far away from that, at least, unless we can take some of these like biotech companies that we do so well at grooming at the beginning, but then they get acquired.
Yeah.
Like, unless we can help them maintain talent and a brand here in Fort Worth, and it may be like, rather than selling and they double down. I mean, the way the stock market is now and the way things are going, like somehow figuring out how to like get funding publicly to float yourself and grow.
Yeah.
I don't know, it might need to be a strategy for one of our potential big companies.
Yeah. And well, how much of that comes from investing in public schools and in people who maybe feel a little bit more invested in the city? Because I mean, a lot of the money in Fort Worth is tied up in Fort Worth Country Day, these places that are a little bit more removed from Fort Worth. Like you've got a lot of Aledo and Keller. They, like Jordan Spieth. Jordan Spieth is from Keller. When you ask where he's from Dallas. And I think that's where a lot of the homegrown Fort Worth is out in these suburbs. And so it's just easier and more notable to tie yourself to Dallas instead of be like, no, like I'm a Fort Worth person.
Yeah. Yeah. And because if you live out there, it's like you grew up not feeling attached to it.
Yeah. You don't come to the city that often. Like you even ask people in Arlington, how often do you go to Fort Worth, or how often do you go to Dallas? It's like, like not very often.
Yeah. Yeah. But we'll see. I think it's all good stuff as we look at neighborhood planning and redistricting. But yeah, let's get into wins and losses. Let's get some wins and losses. I feel like I had some good ones that I was thinking about. Do you have any that comes to mind for you? I can start.
Go for it.
Maybe this is not even I'm considering this a loss because I think it depends what your answer is to this. So I read in the business, I think it was Business Week or Business Insider, of the 202 counties in the United States that owns a Whole Foods. No, it has a Whole Foods market. Biden won 171 of them.
Yeah.
My bet is the one in Fort Worth didn't go to Biden.
Yeah.
Are we there?
Probably.
So that would be my loss. I'm like, well, our Whole Foods.
We are one of the Whole Foods minorities.
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. And a little win for me that was, there's a couple things, right? I'm reading the Obama's new book, Promised Land.
Man, it's so long. I bought the audiobook and it's longer than any Lord of the Rings audiobooks. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, it's 29 hours. God. So I'm like, I got 3 hours left. And so after we record, that is what I'm doing, is finishing it because I got it on Libby, which is literally one of the best inventions ever. Libby is free to people to use. You just get your library card and you can download audiobooks and books right to your iPad. And it's brilliant.
I hear if you go in airplane mode, then when your rental runs out, then it doesn't actually go back. Then you can like maintain it, but it still goes back into the system where other people can also get it.
I did not know that.
Yeah, thanks to a friend for pointing that out.
Yeah, I might need that for this Obama book. It's a big one. But listening to him talk, but one thing he does do is this is really small, but I thought it was cool, is he, in chapter 22, he mentioned how he did concerts with PBS and with all these different artists, and he named like Katy Perry, and he's like, he wrote in the book something like, yeah, we brought big artists like Katy Perry, but we also brought in up and coming artists like Leon Bridges. And I thought that was just kind of cool. Like, I mean, I would feel really honored. Like, he could have wrote anybody's name, Chance the Rapper, anybody. And he said Leon Bridges. And I thought that's cool because his book had 1.7 million sold in 1 week domestically. And he is such a figure internationally. Yeah. So, and people who get to chapter 22 in a book are really smart, really motivated, probably take action. They're probably the people who go to Google and like, who's this Leon Bridges guy? Downloads his music on Spotify, goes to a concert if he's ever in the area. Yeah. So I think that was just kind of cool, like a sub like thing that shows like Fort Worth magic is there. And my other good thing where I feel like there's some Fort Worth magic is my neighbor. My neighbor she's a a dreamer, a DACA student. She goes to Eastland Hills. Am I saying it right? Eastern Hills?
Eastern Hills.
Eastern Hills. She goes to Eastern Hills. Well, she did. She graduated. She's first generation. She's going to UTA. She has all A's. Computer engineering is her major. She's a Latina. Her mom cleans, hotels, works really hard, a great family. And I just think that's cool. I think that's really cool that you're seeing people make Fort Worth special. And she's someone who I just know is going to be very transformational. So it's just cool to see public education work, seeing like just community work, her going to a local school still, like she can afford to go to UTA.
Yeah.
She can't apply for the FAFSA.
Yeah.
And I just think that's what cities should be doing for people, is like Nayeli.
Yeah.
And so I'm really proud of her. And I just wanted to also acknowledge that.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. And hopefully with the coming administration, dreamers can feel safe again, feel safer again. Because I know the last 4 years have been a really tumultuous time for those people. I think my loss, I'll say, is the National Finals Rodeo and the crowd that has brought. I mean, as of whenever, Monday or Tuesday, Fort Worth was down to like 18 ICU beds. Bars were having to close, restaurants having to reduce capacity, and like you just see these people parading around like they do not care. And I mean, we're just trying really hard to fill up those last few beds in the name of quote unquote economic stimulus, which we obviously know 10 months in, the economy will rebound when people can go do stuff.
Yeah.
So I'll say that is my loss. Who knows?
It's crazy. They said they bought 30,000 masks for the convention.
Yeah.
Where the hell are they?
Yeah. Well, and like I would probably contend that a lot of that money that is coming into the city is going into those stockyards businesses that have been thumbing their nose at the pandemic this whole time. Yeah. And so one, it makes every other business look bad. It allows bars to be a scapegoat. When there was a study from Duval County, which is where Jacksonville is, where 78% of their COVID cases were contact traced to in-home gatherings of family and friends. Bars, restaurants, there was nothing over 10% except for the 78% that was that. Yeah. But seeing gatherings like this allows those places to be scapegoated. I mean, I think that Fort Worth is in for a very rough December, January, early February, and I'm not excited to see the amount of cases and death that is contact traced back to this event here.
Yeah, and I don't know we probably don't have a healthy relationship with the vaccine either, in the sense of, and I think that's, if you're super conservative or if you're an African American family, like that is, that is a, there's stigma around it. And so if Fort Worth is going to, one, like you said, get hammered here in December, January, and February, we're going to need some leadership, to take the vaccine publicly, get people comfortable with doing this. For sure. Once we get that access, I think that's
sure. And there was a great tweet shared this week by a few people of you can't compare the African American community being scared to get a vaccine with suburban people, because there is a lot of hurt 100%. And pain tied into that for the African American community, when with the white suburban community it is not that. But I do agree with you that Fort Worth could be in a tough space for people that want to get it. If that means I get further up in line, well, okay. But this is a community effort. So I'll say that's my loss, because I think it does set up a very grim next couple of months for us. And I feel like we've talked about a lot of the wins. Like I think the Pier 1 building is a win. I think that the voices in Hemphill, like Hispanic voices that are typically ignored, actually being able to create change in a city council vote amongst people who are big power brokers is a really cool thing, and not something that is just commonplace or should be taken for granted. So, like, if you are part of that group, like, we appreciate the work that you are doing. We hope that we can help support that. Like, let us know how we can help support that. But I think that's a really cool thing for this city to be able to say that, like, I am Latino, I'm Hispanic, I have equity in my city, my voice is being heard. And so hopefully in the process of the next few months, as they're figuring that out, those voices continue to be heard, and we come up with a plan that doesn't result in the gentrification that they're fearful of. So I think that Fort Worth, as a minority majority city, there's a lot of beauty in that, and a lot of people appreciate living here because of that. And so I'm happy to hear that those voices that are not typically the power brokers are being heard.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great way to end. Thank you for listening to the 817 podcast. I feel like today was very a rainy episode for us. We were very calm, collective. I feel like we were one with Fort Worth nature today, really chill. And
feeling the rain outside.
Just very, honest. I feel like there was a lot of just like straight, let's like get to some of the tactics and the block and tackling of being a Fort Worthian, which is good, and why we did this. And we've had a lot of great guests. So if you want to hear some like Robert Stearns, Cameron Cushman, Laura Lape, like we had a lot of great guests that if you want to hear other people talk about Fort Worth and the importance we all make on molding the city in such a fun time to be here. So thank you for checking out the Fort Worth podcast, and we look forward to talking to you next week.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Dopamine swipe, follow us like double tap.